will he even survive this? The most severe form of SMA that you Googled it. This is bad. But hypotonia and how he was presenting. Oh, will he walk? Like, are we going to end up in hospital? You know, the pity is something I really struggle with. Like leading cause of infant genetic death. Like, I don't want people's pity. Like, it's made me realize like how good I have it. Like, scoliosis is a big concern with SMA. You're just needlessly risking children's lives. There is a very simple test that...
This podcast contains discussions and visual references to a rare genetic condition, including spinal muscular atrophy. It includes references to complex medical care and may contain graphic medical imagery that could be distressing for some viewers. Welcome to the Silent Struggle podcast with me, Michelle Chan. Today's episode focuses on a rare condition, one that can be diagnosed by a simple blood test, yet isn't routinely tested for. My guest, Kat, is a parent to a beautiful child diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy type 1, the most severe form of SMA. Instead of newborn cuddles, there were hospital stays with monitors beeping and tubes everywhere. Instead of simply watching milestones unfold, there were serious conversations about breathing support and life expectancy. Words no parent is prepared to hear. Type 1 SMA affects a baby's ability to move, swallow, and sometimes breathe independently. And for many families, the diagnosis comes suddenly, turning what should be the most happiest chapter of their life into uncertainty and unimaginable decisions. And she's here to tell her story, not just to tell you what happened, but to give a voice to families who's navigating this rare disease and to remind them they're not alone. So let's get started. Before we start, I want to thank everyone for listening to this podcast. It means so much to me. So I've got a favour to ask. Can you please hit the subscribe button? I don't have a production team, so it's only me working tirelessly behind this. It would really help me to continue to bring more episodes of Silent Struggles to you. So if you can hit the subscribe button, that would mean the world to me. Let's get started. Welcome and thank you for joining me today. So today
so much,
I'm
Michelle.
joined with Kat, a parent whose child is living with spinal muscular atrophy. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes, perfect.
Perfect, SMA, a rare genetic condition that affects muscle strength and movement. And thank you for being here. Sharing this isn't always easy. And I love to begin at the beginning. Can you take me back when you first felt something wasn't quite right and what happened at that time?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much, Michelle, for, creating this space to talk about it and share these stories. I think it will just only help other mums, especially as, I spent a lot of those early days second guessing myself when it came to Charlie. So at this point, when Charlie was born, I already had a 4-year-old. Aggie was born in the pandemic. And, we were quite isolated. We had the typical challenges with feeding and, struggles with like weight gain and milk allergy and all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, we had been through that and it felt like, okay, we've made it through having a pandemic baby.
Mm-hmm.
Like we got this second time around. Pregnancy with Charlie was super typical, no issues outside of he was very big. He was measuring super large and I'm quite tiny. I'm only like 5 feet tall. So,
I am
midwives, are you?
Yeah.
Yes. Being short is the best. Wouldn't change it. My daughter is super short and she's always like complaining about like, why am I the shortest one? I'm like, you're going to love it one day. Being tiny is fun. But because he was so big and I'm so small, their concerns were more like his growth and, let's make sure you don't go too much past your due date, just given his size. And that was kind of our big concern. So I actually gave birth at 39 weeks with Charlie. He was ready to go anyway. And then everything with the birth was super typical, no concerns at birth. The only thing they said when he was born was, oh, his hip's a bit clicky. So we'll book him in for the hip clinic in a few weeks' time just to, check there's no like hip dysplasia or anything like that. So we're like, that's fine. Got home. First few days in the newborn bubble were just, blissful, just trash TV going. Baby on my chest, just everything is great. Trying to relearn everything since 4 years is like a decent gap of like, okay, do I remember how to do all of this? And then when he was 4 days old, suddenly Chris noticed something on his testicle. So he had a bruised testicle, and we're like, this is really strange. So then took him to the GP. He was then blue lighted to St. George's Hospital in Tooting for emergency surgery for
4 days
torsion. Old. 4 days old, he had needle torsion. So we spent the night at St. George's. He had emergency surgery.
Wow.
So we thought because they were telling us about how if he loses this testicle, if he loses both testicles, it could be an endocrine hormonal type situation that you're looking at. So we thought oh my God, this is the big event for Charlie. We're going to get over this. We're going to get through this surgery. Everything's going to be fine. So it was already kind of a turbulent couple of weeks, and we just, let's just settle back in. And then as the weeks were going on, I was definitely noticing that there were some things that weren't quite right, but it was a mix of is it because it's been 4 years in between having babies and I forget something? I just was really doubting myself. I would bring things up to other people and they were very reassuring. People don't want to be, you don't want to say that they're being dismissive, but they're just oh, don't worry. Because for the most part, nothing ends up being wrong most of the time. But I was noticing things his legs they all of a sudden weren't really moving, whereas they used to move like a typical baby, but then they stopped. And then I would put him in tummy time and he couldn't lift his head anymore. I would breastfeed him. And usually I would when he was finished feeding and he would do the thing where he would launch his head away, but he stopped doing that. And I really had to hold his head up. I could tell it was kind of dead weight. And even his arms, I noticed his arms just don't seem very strong. Yeah, he was quite floppy. And then the one night, this is when I really started to panic more severely, was the one night I fell asleep while I was nursing him. And I had woken up and his head was totally flopped back. So at that point, I assumed I had done something. So I panicked. I thought okay, I've broken him. I fell asleep and he his head flopped back. Now I know in reality that a typical baby, their head wouldn't have stayed flopped back. He would have been able to at least it wouldn't be, it still isn't good for a newborn for that to happen, but it wouldn't have been as dead weight as it was. So I just kept taking stock and okay, we have the hip clinic was booked in. They'll take a look at maybe there's something going on with his hips or something developmentally. So let's just get through that appointment and we'll go from there. But then we went to the hip clinic. He had the check for dysplasia and they were yep, they're in socket. Everything's fine. Go on your merry way. And I was that's a relief, but it's still odd to me. Something still doesn't seem right. Yeah. And then I went out with my friend that day. It was funny also because we were going on a pastry crawl in the city. We're let's have a fun day. Charlie's coming with us. We're going to get a bunch of pastries, which now I look back, it was kind of one last nice outing before our hospital time. But we were out that day and I said to my friend, I don't really like his breathing. I would wear him in the baby wrap. I tried putting him in the baby wrap. He was really upset. I put him in the buggy and I looked at him. I was he looked I don't like the way he's breathing. His belly looked it was really working hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I checked with her and she's like, yeah, I don't know. That doesn't look right. And then we had a friend in our like nursery group text who's a GP. So she's like, let's just send a video to the GP in our group. And I was like, what do you think of this? Like, I don't know if this is normal. And that's when I just knew, like, my heart just sank and I knew, okay, something's not right. I just need to take him to A&E. So we went to A&E, and this whole time Chris is still telling me like, he's fine, nothing's wrong. But then as I got to A&E and they were checking him for respiratory distress, the pediatrician said, like, as she was checking him, she was like, can you find videos on your phone of how he normally moves? Because he's quite floppy. He's not really moving anything. Like, he doesn't seem to have any like reflexes. So I was just scrolling through my phone, trying to find anything where he was moving. And the only thing I could really find at that point in recent weeks was his right arm could kind of move from the forearm. And that was it. And that's when, the dominoes really started to fall. She was bringing in more consultants and other people to get second opinions. And at this point I was really panicking and I was telling Chris, like, you need to get here. You need to drop our daughter off with friends. Like, something's not right. And, he's still at this point holding on hope that like, oh, she's just worrying, not in like a dismissive way, but just to know like, it'll be fine. But then, they went through like the battery of tests, like lumbar puncture to check for infection and, swabbed for absolutely everything. But as they were doing all of this, I just kept hearing them in the background talking about hypotonia and how he was presenting. And I just remember still like bringing it up to the one consultant on call saying like, I overheard the one pediatrician saying she was really concerned. And he was like, I am too. You need to stay tonight. We need to figure this out. At this point, they put him on like low oxygen and we were just like waiting to find out what was going on. And then
How many weeks was he then at that point?
Yeah, that's a good point. So at this point, he was 7 weeks old.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So 7 weeks. And when the next day, and it was funny because my sister was already planning on coming over to visit from New York. So she was on her way over from New York and landed that day. And I was like, we're in the hospital, like, come find me here. And then the next pediatrician the next morning, after handover, she came in and sat Chris and I down after she took a look at Charlie. And she said, look, like, this is a really hard thing to hear. This looks like spinal muscular atrophy, which she said, don't Google it. There are treatments available now. And if you Google it, you'll get the worst case scenario. And at this point, Chris and I had never heard. So this is the thing. I didn't, because I just obviously was just in a state of shock and I just didn't want my phone. I was just like, just wanted to like stare at Charlie. And I was just obviously like beside myself with shock. But then I could tell the moment that Chris Googled it, because he left the room, walked back in, and he was sobbing. And I was like, okay, he Googled it. This is bad. But we were so fortunate, really. It sounds crazy, but we are so lucky that we had a consultant in our community hospital who knew what SMA was, because so many of the stories are it's getting missed. The kids in the UK weren't diagnosed until much later because the signs get ignored. But she knew the moment she checked his reflexes, saw his breathing and how hard he was working to breathe. She said, I've seen this. I know what this is. This is what we're going to do. And thank God for that, because she kicked right into like, let's get testing done. Let's get him where he needs to be. So it sounds really strange to say how lucky we were, but at 7 weeks old, catching that when we did and getting to like kickstart the process was something that most of my, new friends, SMA family friends, they didn't have that same experience. So it was really shocking and tough, but if anything, it was, it was the best case scenario considering we don't have newborn screening in the UK still.
Mm-hmm.
I'll pause there. I know sure you have questions based off of that whole story.
Yeah. At that time when you there's all these checks and you found out it might be SMA. How did you feel, and did you get enough support, like mentally?
Yeah. So in terms of the support, so basically, at that point it was like my world was turned upside down. I at that point was in a place where I didn't know, since I had never heard of SMA. You assume the worst. You think like, is he going to make it through this? What does the future look like? What do I do with my daughter? And, she was at this point with friends who luckily took her in, and, she was staying overnight with them, and she was perfectly happy and fine. But for us, we were just like, do we tell her where we are? What do we do? And then on top of that, I'm trying to understand, what does this mean? Will he even survive this? Because in fact, when you do Google it, the first thing that comes up is like leading cause of infant genetic death. So, right away, I was so fortunate that my sister had come over, because she sat with us, made sure that we were eating and drinking, just basics. But then also we had in the hospital a family support worker who really, luckily sat us down, told us what to do with Aggie, because we were like, we don't know what to do with our daughter. Should we keep her away? And she was like, told us very clearly, like, absolutely not. You need her right now. Mm. Kids are so resilient. You'll bring her in here and she'll probably just like take it for what it is. Like, oh, Charlie's in the hospital. Okay, where can I play with my toys? And she was very reassuring about, the way that doctors speak. They can't tell you he's not going to die, because it's just not the way that a doctor can speak in that moment. Because it's kind of like, you can't guarantee that for anyone. Anyone could go out and like, be in a car accident or something. So she was very much like reassuring that no one is concerned that right now that he is going to die. So she was very reassuring. She was just what I needed. They very much like helped us kind of transition from what we thought life would look like into this new hospital life, because, we didn't know it then, but we were looking at 2 months in hospital, mostly getting like ventilation set up. So between having those family support workers, luckily having my sister there, who then canceled her flight back to then be with our daughter for a little bit. And then we did have it was such a blessing having her here. And then also having family stay with our daughter. And then we had our parents come over, but really it was just like, it's the full range of emotions with grief as well. So we really needed help kind of navigating that, and like the feelings of like anger and fear. And we very luckily had some really good like in-hospital support. And then our friends who just showed up, and said, we're on this journey with you. And then on top of that, we got in touch straight away with SMA UK, which is like, the charity in the UK that supports families with SMA. And straight away, they got us in contact with other families on their group message. They have like a WhatsApp group where other families can speak with each other. And there were a couple other SMA families that we were introduced to that, spoke to us about, what life looks like on the other side, past diagnosis, past treatment. As we were in that period where getting treatment for Charlie was the biggest priority. Treatment. Yes.
So just going back to testing, what type of test that he needs to be able to diagnose its SMA, and how long was the test? Did it take for all this to happen in the hospital? Did you say 2 months he was in?
So he was in the hospital for 2 months, primarily because he was getting set up with ventilation that we would be going home with, which is very common for any sort of like muscular type condition. because SMA in particular, it affects all muscles in the body, including those for swallowing and for breathing. So, we were definitely seeing that with Charlie, but luckily the tests for SMA are very straightforward, simple blood test. They tested Chris and my blood as well, just to see, to confirm that we were carriers of SMA. But for Charlie, it was a simple blood test, went out, came back a few days later, because luckily the consultants in our community hospital were really pushing for urgency with the test to confirm it. And I think it was like a week later, we got the confirmation back. But then also with that, there are different types of SMA. And it different with the blood test. You can also find out how many copies of the gene basically that he has to know the severity level.
I've been reading into it. Is it something SMN1 or something?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's basically like the survival motor neuron. In this process, we've had to learn a lot about the genetics of all of it, which Chris is very much into that, like the science behind the, genomics and all of that. But basically we found out that Charlie had 2 copies of this, which basically, since this produces the protein for the motor neurons, and basically the longer SMA goes untreated, the more motor neurons are dying and they don't come back. So that's why we were seeing he moved his legs, he moved his arms, and then he didn't weeks later. And his breathing was becoming more distressed, because he started off like a typical baby at birth. And then as time goes on, they're losing those motor neurons.
Yeah.
So basically, once we got that confirmation it was SMA, we started on one of the treatments that was an oral treatment for SMA, which all under the NHS, but there are 3 options for treatment with SMA, which 2 of the treatments help build the proteins back. So for that survivor motor neuron, I don't know why I have a hard time saying it. It helps, boost the protein production and kind of halt that disease progression. However, Zolgensma, which is the gene therapy, that actually fixes the broken copy of the gene. So that helps the body produce its own protein. So that's ultimately what we wanted to get. So Aggie does not have SMA. Aggie is totally typical child. Charlie, however, we knew when he was diagnosed, we wanted to get him on one of the treatments straight away, because there's some hurdles you have to jump to get to gene therapy. But we knew ultimately we wanted him to have the gene therapy. But yeah, it's kind of a process to get there in terms of getting approvals, making sure that since it's delivered through a virus, making sure he didn't have the antibodies to that virus, so his body would actually accept it. So it was just, while we're in hospital for those 2 months, also making sure that, he'll be a candidate for it, he'll be approved, and then he can get it. So it was just that whole time in hospital felt like a fight to get his breathing stronger, while also we really know we want to get to gene therapy. So how can we make that happen? So that's kind of the diagnosis to treatment, what that looked like in that time.
Okay, when did he get gene therapy then? Did he get gene therapy?
Yes, so he was on the oral treatment risdiplam from when he was 8 weeks old until
8 weeks.
Yes, so very luckily started it at 8 weeks, and we already had seen some gains in his strength, in his arms, and we could tell that he was getting some neck strength, head strength back. But then he had Zolgensma on the 10th of December, 2024, which the 10th of December, 2024, when he was 3.5 months old. And in the SMA community, we call that their gene-iversary. It's kind of like a second birthday.
Okay.
Which is very fun. But yeah, so we were discharged for about a week from hospital and then went back for his gene therapy. And how it works with getting the gene therapy, they need 2 cannulas placed. So with the 2 cannulas, just in case one fails, then they need the other one available to quickly switch it, because essentially it's one of the most expensive drugs in the world. It's about 2 million pounds per dose. So they want to make sure that, it doesn't fail and it's not wasted. And it's kind of, it's a lot riding on like 30 mils of liquid. But then he had his cannulas placed, which took an hour and a half because SMA veins are very small and stubborn. And then it took an hour-long infusion of the gene therapy. It's a one-time treatment. And then, since then, we've just kind of put our faith that the gene therapy is working. And it's just been very luckily for us, like a miraculous drug for Charlie.
So what happened after the gene therapy? Did it work well? And what improvement did you see?
Yeah, we 100% know that it has worked for Charlie. It feels like a big leap of faith because they just come in the room and it's just like this 30 mil vial, and it's very like there's so much buildup, and then it's so anticlimactic on the day itself where you're just, okay, well, it's like he's just getting like an IV drip of, it could be anything, but we basically, you're told with Zolgensma, you have to make sure that you do the physiotherapy, that now you put in the work. It's kind of like, otherwise it's like getting a Ferrari and then not actually getting the keys. So you need to make sure that you're staying on top of like his physiotherapy routine. So we came home, and he's also in the immediate aftermath, they're on a high dose of steroids to protect their liver, since it does make their antibodies go absolutely insane because it's a virus that's delivered to them.
Oh.
So you come home, they're on this insane amount of steroids. You're given ondansetron, which is an anti-sickness medication, because there's a lot of, it just wreaks havoc on their body to start. But then, as time goes on and they, those immediate impacts are settling, you start the physiotherapy. And we've had an ever evolving routine with Charlie over the past, little over a year since he's been home, of, rebuilding strength in his legs, making sure he's, getting tummy time, building up his neck strength, building up arm strength, working on his like transition. So how he'll eventually, with rolling and figuring out how to roll, but then eventually how will he go from lying to sitting or sitting to lying down? And we've seen incredible gains with his physiotherapy. I'm definitely a bit of a drill sergeant, which is maybe not the most healthy thing as a mom, but while he has a private physio, an NHS physio, I'm making sure that I'm also staying on top of that routine with him throughout the week, and doing things like getting him in his standing frame. He has some tools for like tummy time and like wedges and things. But it's just, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Could I ask, like when he was discharged, what did he come home with? Did he come home with like ventilation, or what equipment or therapies that your child needs?
Yeah. So Charlie, he came home with, it basically turned into like a small hospital in his room. So we came home with an oxygen saturation monitor, his ventilation, which he is on BiPAP, which is basically like a nasal mask that delivers two levels of pressure to support his breathing overnight, which he doesn't mind the mask. But then on top of it, we have his cough assist machine, which helps strengthen his cough. It basically is another mask that like produces a cough for him to help, strengthen that and bring up any secretion, so any like mucus or snot. We have a hospital grade suction machine for his secretions, a nebulizer for basically all for his chest. And then in terms of physiotherapy equipment, it's loads of like wedges, and I have like a massage table that I use for his physio.
Wow.
And then there are things like his spinal stim machine that we've recent. So that helps, like, it's basically like electric stimulation on his muscles, since, that helps to build muscle strength, but then also scoliosis is a big concern with SMA.
Okay.
So with Charlie, we're constantly monitoring his, his curve in his spine, and that kind of helps to strengthen his spine. But then there's also orthotics on top of that. So leg splints, a spinal brace. He's got a lot of equipment, and then his specialty seating, his wheelchairs.
Okay.
It's chaos.
Yeah, there's loads that you came home with, and that was 3 months, right?
Yeah. So initially in the beginning, it started out just with the ventilation and the respiratory equipment. And then over time it's
Gradually added.
Yes. Yeah. Loads of new things. Basically every time we go to the hospital or the physio, we have something new at the house.
So you have training on all the equipment that they provide you?
Yeah, you basically can't be discharged from the hospital without training on the ventilation equipment. So you really do have to become a nurse when you have this condition, and when you're, leaving the hospital with that. They go through multiple trainings with you. You have to get signed off by the team.
Signed off.
But, yes. But we honestly, I have such a fondness for the ward that we were on for 2 months, because they were just like the most incredible people. They made it feel very much like a home from home environment. And while, you wouldn't wish you would be in hospital for 2 months, we were in like the best place for him. Even still, when we drop by that ward for any sort of supplies that we need, they're always so excited to see Charlie. And it's just coming to a second home a bit. So, it was a very comfortable place to learn how to do everything.
Wow, it's not easy being a new mum, and you also need to be a nurse and be a qualified and have tests to do all these procedures.
Yes. Yeah. It's interesting now that, Jessie Nelson from Little Mix, since she came out and said her twins were diagnosed with SMA, and she went on, I think it was this morning, and she was talking about how she just wants to be their mom. She feels like a nurse. And it's so much that you just get this feeling of, I can't just be his mom today. I have to be his nurse, and he's crying while you're doing nasal suction, or he's crying while you're doing something with physio for him. And you're like, we have to do this. But then I just want a day where I just want to be your mom and just cuddle and go for a walk. But I feel like there's so much in his routine that I just don't get that moment to always just I feel like we kind of got robbed of that with Charlie, of just, enjoying his babyhood. Instead, it's you go into this mode of being a nurse on top of, parenting. It just doesn't leave a lot of room for just, the typical stuff. So Charlie's routine, it's quite hectic, definitely a very involved process. But basically when he wakes up in the morning, it depends if he's, under the weather, we might need to do a bit of his respiratory physio straight away, doing a bit of suction or cough assist in the morning. Otherwise, getting him up and putting on his spinal brace right away. So when he's going to eat breakfast, then we have his spinal brace to help keep him upright when he is in his, special seating.
Wow. Put
him in his seating. And then, he's orally fed, which a lot of the children with SMA are tube fed because of, again, the swallow muscles. There can be a risk of aspiration. But for Charlie, he is orally fed. So give him breakfast, and then he does go to a mainstream nursery a few days a week. So and they've been incredible. So on the days he goes to nursery, then we have to pack up the car with his wheelchair, his leg orthotics, so they can do like hit some of his physio at nursery with him, which they've been really supportive of. So, get him over there. Typically, he'll have an appointment. He has probably like at minimum 3 appointments a week. So we're usually picking him up from nursery to take him to whether it's physio, hydrotherapy, hospital appointments. So then he'll go there. And then when he's home, that's when we do some of his like home physio routine, whether that's doing his like spinal stim, which we aim for at this point, doing like an hour of that a day. And then we'll do things like different exercises where he'll do tummy time, some floor time with rolling. And then he needs to do an hour of standing per day to help support his hips. So then we have to somehow fit it. Sometimes I'll do his like spinal stim while he's doing his on his like standing frame. And then, feeding again in his specialty seating. And then we'll do his bedtime routine is quite involved. So he has, typical bath, but then we'll do some stretching and massage for his muscles after the bath because children with SMA get muscle contractures. That's when like their muscles get super, super tight. And they basically just like get stuck due to the tension. So we have to do lots of massage and stretching to make sure his muscles stay nice and soft. And then his respiratory physio. So doing his cough assist, his nebulizer, any suction if we need to do suction. And then when he goes to bed, then we put on his BiPAP mask and set that up. I also missed, he does nap during the day. Not, he's not a great napper, but there is a nap thrown in there during the day. But then also it depends. We have through the NHS, we have a nurse 3 nights per week, which is a lifesaver. Yeah. So that gives us that respite since it is, overnight. It's not typical that we're able to, he doesn't sleep through the night and there's usually something that comes up with his ventilation. Wow. Either like an alarm or he needs to be turned and repositioned because he can't move himself. So we have that nurse. So we get everything set up for the nurse on those nights. Otherwise, it's just prepare for battle of who's going to be up with Charlie through the night, which usually it's me. But then it's kind of like whether he needs to be repositioned or he needs, something checked with his ventilation. So it's quite a multi-step process.
Yeah, it sounds really intense. Like, how do you even get time for yourself or even like work and household duties as like a parent that don't have a child with complex medical needs? I find it really hard. You must find it really, really challenging for like every single day of your life. How do you manage it?
Oh, I don't know. This is the thing is that I don't know if I'm managing it particularly well, but
you're doing really, really good job.
Sometimes I'm just, thank you, that's kind. And then there are days where I'm just like, I don't know how we're doing it. You just kind of have to grin and bear it a bit with working full time. Like I'm constantly sacrificing stuff with work or with Aggie to focus on Charlie. Sometimes there's things that I miss from his routine where I don't get to do his stretching as much as I wanted to, or he wasn't in his standing frame as long as he should have been, or we didn't get to do like XYZ with him. But it's just about, at this point, it's not about getting it all done, but just accepting that sometimes I can't do it all. And, I'm going to try my best every day, but there are some things that are just, the laundry is not going to get put away for a few days because I just don't have the time. Or maybe I need a day where I am like focusing on getting stuff done in the house. And that might mean like, okay, I didn't spend as much time doing certain things with Charlie, but we found ways around it. So it's really, at this point, I'm in a place of acceptance that it is chaotic, but it's, we're doing our best and Charlie's thriving. So that's as good as it's going to be right now.
Going back to the night nurse, I never really heard of that they'll come over. How long do the night nurse come over for? How do long
So
did it say?
she comes from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. 3 nights a week.
Wow.
Yeah, which at first it was totally weird having someone in our home like watching Charlie while we're asleep, but then it's become our lifeline because he doesn't sleep. And we never would have expected, having that setup for our child, but it's been such a game changer. Like she is so in tune with him, and I feel totally safe and trusting of her that, okay, when Faith's here, I can get like a restful night because, the other nights with Charlie are not, you're very much switched on and it's not very, you don't get that restorative sleep. It's you're up right away. You're doing things in the night with him. So it's a game changer for us. We're very, very grateful for it.
What is a typical bad day for you, like for his routine?
When you're trying to get anything done with him and he's, upset, he's overall a very happy baby. But sometimes when you're doing physio with him and he's, not happy, doesn't want to do it, and you're trying to fight through it because he needs it, that can be really hard. It can be hard too when, between his sister and him going to nursery a few days a week, like he's bringing home illnesses, caught like that. That's a big struggle. And then I instantly jump to like, are we going to end up in hospital this time? Can we manage this at home? Or, is he going to need intervention? So that's when things get a bit tricky is, illnesses feel a bit more, since he's more vulnerable, they feel a bit more stressful just given that. So it's, whether he's grumpy and not willing to like do his routine or if he's unwell, then things can get like really thrown off. And then especially when he's unwell and we have to like cancel appointments, then it feels like my job then becomes like full admin mode of moving things around and finding out when we can rearrange this date. And it's just a real headache.
Because you said that you met some mothers that also have their child has SMA. Do you go out to meet mum friends that doesn't have child doesn't have SMA, and is it hard to speak to them, to relate to them, and do you meet them often? Or
I very much have all of my friends who, I've made throughout my life, and with Aggie, like having, my older daughter and meeting friends through like her nursery and school, etc. And I still have all of those friends, and I've obviously made friends with parents of, SMA children and like of other different complex needs. But I've definitely noticed it's interesting where that piece about like not relating to people, like I think I've had a lot of friends who are very much like willing to learn about SMA and get involved and, really support us. But then sometimes, you can't help but like when you're with their children and you see, they're like just the typical day to day without all of this extra, that you feel like that twinge of like, it's a bit of like jealousy of just, oh, this looks so simple. And, but at the end of the day, even though it can be hard, and I very much like, I have my friends for, I need different things from my friends. Like I need to talk to my SMA mom friends about like, what did you do for this? Or questions about physio, or like, oh, this is like a very specific thing I need to complain about that only they'll understand. But then I still need my other friends. And even though it's hard sometimes to, relate to certain things, like I still want them to complain to me. I still want them to like come to me and like we can vent about things. And even if they can't relate to everything I'm going through, like I very much I like when they just treat me, like my normal self too, because it can be easy to lose yourself in this like medical motherhood. So it's been challenging. I think I had a harder time earlier on when like it just felt like, okay, no one can understand this. But then as time has gone on and I know how much my friends just love and support our family, it's been easier to say like they may not relate to everything, but I have people to go to when I need certain things. And then I have them, because they've been there throughout this whole journey too. So, it's hard not to face like the ugly feelings of like when I feel a bit jealous or, when there are complaints and I'm like, oh, I wish that were my problem. But at the end of the day, everyone has different hard things that they're dealing with. And it's not all black and white.
I love your mindset. I love it. I love it.
Trying.
Positivity. When you're out in public, what reactions do you get?
It's so interesting because with SMA, it does not affect them cognitively. So he very much presents like if he's just in his buggy and you wouldn't know that he didn't have any complex needs, like you really wouldn't know any different. He laughs, he babbles, he's waving, like he presents, very typically. But then the reaction you get when you see like, okay, he's got his brace or he's in his wheelchair, it's, there are a lot of like looks and you overhear people saying things like, is that a baby in a wheelchair? And a lot of, just curiosity about it. Or like when he's not as strong, like people don't know like how to ask or how to talk about it. And I very much have, like, I have a badge on his buggy that says like, treat me like a wheelchair. So when we are out like on the bus and they're like, fold up the buggy, like, no, he needs to stay in here. So it's the reaction from adults is always very, like a bit confused and surprised. And, you get a lot of like strange comments of like, will he grow out of it? Or very concerned about the walking, like, well, will he walk? And then you get the reactions from kids. I always notice like when we're at the playground with Aggie and Charlie's there in his chair, then they're very much, kids are just like, why is he in a wheelchair? What's going on with him? And then Aggie or myself will share his muscles aren't as strong as ours. And they're like, okay, let's go play. And they just like treat it so much more normally than like when you're not an adult and you're just like, what's wrong? Do I say something? Do I not say something? Like, I'm confused. And then it just like blows their mind. But instead, if you're a kid, it's just like, what's going on there? Okay. Acceptance. So yeah, the reactions are, you can tell when someone's like looking and they're confused. And I would almost rather someone just say like, oh, like, what's going on here? Instead of just like the staring. And I'm like, I know you're looking at me. I know that you're confused why this little baby who presents very typically is in a wheelchair. But yeah, it's, you can always tell.
Did you get any like hurtful comments or anything? No?
I guess this is the thing is that people are constantly saying things that I don't think they know are hurtful. But they might rub us the wrong way. Or but you just have to like remember, like, if the intention is good, then you have to, just kind of just suck it up, because I'm sure I've said some crazy things in my time that now looking back are like, oh, I probably shouldn't have said that. But we get a lot of the like, you never know, maybe he'll walk. And that always ends up getting me, because I'm like, number one, walking is not the most important thing for me as his mom. I want him to be happy. I want him to be strong enough for his quality of life. But what really bothers me is when people jump right to like, well, maybe he'll walk. Like, I've seen, other people with XYZ, they end up walking and like that sort of thing. And maybe like he'll grow out of it. And then I'll have some comments sometimes about like, yeah, like you've made me realize like how good I have it. Like I've had that a couple of times. And I think the intention is meant to be like, oh, this is like perspective. But I think once I remember, like, the intention is like they want the best for Charlie, or like someone sees like how challenging it's been. Like, I get it. But there are moments where I'm just like, I just want to scream, like, it's not that walking is not the point here. Like, he's alive, he's happy. Like, that's the point. But yeah, you get a lot of interesting comments.
Yeah, I guess so. Because like I remember when my daughter was in NICU as well. When she was in NICU, um, I think people don't mean it, but they don't know what to say.
Yeah.
So they just say it thinking that it's helpful, but it's not actually helpful. So coming from you, what would you think people should say? Because I think speaking to a lot of parents, it's how the public, they don't know how to communicate. They don't know what words would offend you, what words is helpful, supportive. So what words would you like people to say to you that is helpful, supportive? What would you like others to do?
I think, and that's the thing is when people don't know what to say, they really jump into
Mm,
like assuming what you want to hear. But for me, what's resonated the most and what I find the most supportive is when people just say, like, oh, I really want to learn more about the condition. And that's like the best way to support is like, oh, I'll read more about SMA. Like I want to learn more about it. Like I want to see like, you know, how to best support you by seeing, you know, what I want to learn more about what your day to day looks like. I think when people just like make assumptions instead of just listening and being curious and like actually getting to know my child, like that's like the best approach instead of just like making the assumption, saying like platitudes that don't really mean anything to me. But like actually like being curious and willing to learn, I think is like the best support someone can give, especially since, you know, similar to you, think like when you live somewhere where you didn't necessarily like you don't have that like family network around you,
yeah.
just having people say like, oh, I'll learn about this, and like I, you know, they can ask more thoughtful questions, or like, hey, I saw like scoliosis is something that SMA kids get, like how do you feel about that, like being more intentional with what they're saying instead of just like, you know, the assumptions of like, you know, oh, will he walk? Or I think what really bothers me too is when people are like, I'm really sorry about his diagnosis. And I think, you know, it's at this point for me, it's not a tragedy. He's here, he's thriving. So, you know, the pity is something I really struggle with. Like, I don't want people's pity. Like, this is just, it's hard. Let me vent sometimes, but I'm still a person. Just learn about my child and learn about what he has and then see how you can support. But I think that's the best approach. It's because I think a lot of people, they, as you said, like they get really nervous and don't know what to say. And then they end up saying something that's like so out of left field that you're just like, you could have just said like, oh, what does this mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'd like to learn more and end it.
Have
But
you had
something
anyone that's
happens.
actually said things that you felt it's supportive and then you really appreciate them actually doing certain gestures for you? Like, I don't know, like helping you when you're in public or when you're struggling?
Yeah, I've had friends who've wanted to, like, there's this one group that Charlie goes to every week with other SMA kids. It's like this space in Richmond. It's called Small Steps. It's dedicated just to children with physical disabilities. And I've had friends who are like, I'd love to go with you sometime because I
Oh,
know
that's
how much, like,
lovely.
yeah, so they want to come, they want to be involved and learn more. We have a friend who's like fundraising for them to support
Oh.
them. And so I think that's what means the most to me is when people want to like be involved in our lives. And that's the best gesture. So, and then even for my friends who might live in the US still, that have said to me, like, I'm going to learn more about this part of his care, or like, oh, I want to do like this fundraiser. And it's not about like actually raising money, but the fact that that's like that's how they're thinking about it is like, you know, supporting us through that lens. That's when I feel the most, you know, seen and supported.
Has he been to America?
Yes, he's
Ooh.
been twice. Yeah.
Flight? Can I ask you during the flight? You tell me.
Yeah, so we had to do a basically like a fit to fly test
Okay.
where I sat in an oxygen suppressed box with him to make sure that he was strong enough to like handle flying
Okay.
where there's lower oxygen. And he did great on that, but we still had his like ventilation on board
On
in case he
board.
needed it. Yeah. But in terms of flying with him, he he has managed it absolutely fine. If anything, when we flew back last time, he behaved better than his older sister on the flight. So actually travel with him it's just tough. The more equipment he has, I feel like even if we're going away for like a week, we have to pack like our whole house of stuff because he just requires so much stuff. But he's been physically fine during travel, which has been a big relief.
Would he be sitting on the chair with support?
At this point, because he's still under 2, he's still a lap
Yeah.
child. But yeah, it will be interesting when he's 2 and will need his own seat. I know there's some families have recommended some like supportive seating that you can like add to the like the airline seat. But at this point, he's still on my lap, which is fine. But yeah, it'll be interesting when he's 2 and we're like, okay, we need to secure him better because he won't be a typical 2-year-old. But in that sense too, it's interesting because typically at that age, what they want to do is like run up and down the aisle of the plane, but that won't be our experience with him. But he's still, again, very curious. Like I'm sure he'll still want to like move around and check things out. But we'll see how that looks in a few months.
Because you said that he'll be on your lap, so he won't be on in a bassinet, no?
No, he's also very big, which is shocking because again, with me being so small, he is massive for his age.
Really?
He's like already filling out his 2T clothes when he's 18 months.
Wow,
Yeah.
really?
So he's a very large lap child.
Must be really heavy. So do you go with your whole family? So then you'll need a break to go to the toilet. So then you pass him to your partner.
Yeah, exactly. But it's physically very demanding carrying him around because he's big and low tone. So he doesn't really like support his own weight like a typical child. So it definitely a long day of like carrying him around. And luckily with his wheelchair, you can get a break with that, but he's still a baby. He wants to be held and it's, crushes your back, but that's just, caregiver back.
Yeah, that's your day. Every day you have a gym workout.
Right. My shoulders have never been more toned. I look in the mirror, I'm like, okay, side effect of having to lift Charlie.
How now I'm going to say the right name. How's Aggie like with Charlie?
She has been on the whole amazing with him. So like confident explaining what SMA is. She loves telling people about SMA. She loves like pretending to be his physio and like doing exercises with him. Like she gets so involved. She loves to, be in charge of like his cough assist machine. And she's so sweet with him. We've definitely had some struggles with, her acting out when we were in hospital, like in our inpatient time. And even since then, we've noticed like where her behavior will, where she can't communicate that she's like struggling with something or she is like missing out on something with us. So, she'll act out. And we've had to kind of deal with the highs and lows of processing that with her. But we've definitely just found like the more we involve her in his care, the better off she is. But yeah, it's been on the whole, she's so amazing with him. But she definitely has her moments where we can see that like it's a lot for her and it's a lot more than like the typical older sibling would have to, manage in the family. So she's done well with it, but it's a challenge.
Sorry, I forgot to ask, because SMA, there's different types, right? I've been reading it's like 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? And what type is Charlie? And what?
So
Yeah.
Charlie's type 1, because so basically type 1 is when they present before like 6 months of age.
Okay.
And it's outside of type 0, which is extremely rare. Type 1 is the most severe form of SMA that you would typically see. Type 2 would be presenting like after 6 months of age. And then there's even type 3, which presents closer to like before 4 years of age. But with the type that he has, it does also tend to impact the respiratory side a bit more. But also it's the kind of thing that you see with newborn screening. The type 1s, if they're screened and treated pre-symptomatically, then they just present like any typical child would. So that's it's a bit tricky, but yeah, it's we've met all ranges of like type 1, type 2, type 3 at this point. So it definitely is so individual, their experience with SMA.
You know, like so fascinating why newborn screening doesn't already have this test. Like,
yeah, it is very frustrating, especially, living with the hindsight, being American and knowing if he were born in the US, he would have been screened because
really?
all 50 states.
America, you do have that? Just not in UK? Wow.
Yeah, I think there are 45 countries that screen for SMA, including the Ukraine rolled out their screening during the war with Russia. So it's just, I think we're very lucky. Jessie Nelson is speaking out about it. She had the petition about newborn screening that went out last week. And she's done so much to make this a broader issue because it is such a simple heel prick test that is so life-changing for these children that it makes no sense why it wouldn't be implemented. It was first presented back in like 2019 when gene therapy was very much, becoming a part of the NHS, but they still denied it then, which is you're just needlessly risking children's lives when there is a very simple test that can change everything for them.
Yeah. But another thing is do you get help with all the equipment, as in financially? Do you get disability? Is it DLA?
DLA, yes. So interestingly, because we are here on work visas, we haven't been able to get DLA, but we just have been able to get the kids their British passport. So now we'll be able to get DLA, which is, helpful. But for larger pieces of equipment like Charlie's wheelchair, we got a grant.
Okay.
For that. So there has been charity support. And then also his other equipment, that comes through the NHS. So his supportive seating in the home, his ventilation, that's all NHS provided. But yeah, there's a lot of even just thinking about some of the private services, the amount that we spend on private physio and all that stuff, it definitely adds up. That DLA doesn't fully cover, but it's worth it. So
yeah, I'm glad that you can get it sorted soon because all these, it does add up, and you don't need to go through it as a new mum. Financially, it does, even with someone without a child with medical needs, it costs a lot having a child.
Yeah. So yes,
it does help when you can get the support. Lastly,
100%.
Lastly, is there anything else I have missed that I haven't asked you that you want to tell the public about SMA?
Yeah, I think the newborn screening, that's definitely just the biggest thing is, if we're not going to have newborn screening for any new mom to understand the signs of SMA, but also just that knowing that if you have concerns about your child and you have any doubts or any questions, raise those and don't accept being dismissed or being told you're just worrying too much, or like you're a first time mom, you don't know, or like, oh, you might just forget because you had a child like years ago. But just listen to your intuition, because moms always know best for their babies. And, in my case, it saved my child's life. But, you need to listen to your gut. Yeah. And if you think something's wrong, I would always, every time, I'd rather be that, I'd rather feel silly for taking my child to A&E to get them checked rather than wish that I had taken them in. So that's always, whenever I have a friend who's like, should I take my child to hospital? If you're at that point, take your child to hospital, get them checked. I would rather be there every day saying hey, I think this is wrong than miss something. So yeah, I think that's the only thing, just my big learning through all of this. As hard as it's been, I definitely feel like I trust myself more and my gut. So that's, moms always know.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And I want to tell you, you are extraordinary. It's extraordinary that you've come so far. And most people will never fully understand what it takes to raise a child with complex medical needs. And you're doing far more than just enough.
Thanks, Michelle.
This message extends to every single parent who's going through similar conditions, and you're seen and you're valued, and you're doing an incredible job. And thank you for sharing your story. This conversation matters. I truly hope this conversation reaches parent who feels alone and remind that they're not actually alone.
Thanks for creating the space to share those stories and, to reach other parents. I think it's so important.
Thank you so much for listening to this show. If you like this show, like what we're doing here, and you want to support us, the free way to do so is hitting the subscribe button. If you're struggling and you want to share your story, please check out the link in the description. And I will promise to do my best to create awareness for the conditions that people are suffering silently.